Absolutely, Peter. And I mean, this is what this senior public health official is testifying about all morning this morning before Congress. So this is Dr. Richard Bright. He was the head of a federal organisation that essentially is in charge of vaccines, countermeasures to bioweapons and to pandemics just like this. Well,
initially, our nation was not as prepared as we should have been, as we could have been. Some scientists raised early warning signals that were overlooked, and pages from our pandemic playbook were ignored by some in leadership. There will be plenty of time to look back to assess what has happened so we can improve. But right now, we need to focus on getting things right going forward.
And so this expert who was heading this organisation meant to come up with America's countermeasures to bioweapons and vaccines, says that there was a litany of opportunities that were missed that he believes has since resulted in deaths. He said warnings that he was pushing up to the top of his department and to the top of the government were just being ignored. He says that there is a complete lack of a national strategy. He says that these shortages of critical equipment were identified in January and no one was listening. And he says that he was personally sidelined on April 22, pushed aside to a different job, because President Trump was pushing one of President Trump's own cures. There's a malaria drug, hydroxychloroquine. Whereas this expert was saying, well, the scientific data isn't there, Mr. President. I'm not willing to push it out into pharmacies over the counter. And he said for that reason, he was shoved aside. Now, just quickly in other news too, a senator from North Carolina, a Republican, has just had to stand down as the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee because in February and March, he dumped millions of dollars worth of stocks before the public knew that the pandemic was coming, and while he was receiving government briefings.
It's interesting developments, isn't it? And this, of course, is on the back of Donald Trump and Anthony Fauci's stoushes this week as well. Fauci appearing yesterday, and some really interesting developments there. But it's all on the back of tensions between Americans also, who feel it's their right to reopen the economy, and then Americans who want to play it safe. That's all heating up.
Well, you're absolutely right to touch upon the now divide between the public face of the coronavirus, White House coronavirus task force, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and the president himself. Dr. Anthony Fauci testified a couple of days ago, we've got to go slow, people. We've got to go slow. Whereas the president says, let's just reopen schools now. And he says, my expert, Dr. Fauci, is wrong. Now, this is hitting upon to open or to stay closed to save lives. You know, save the economy, save lives, is hitting upon a bunch of tensions between progressives and conservators, between Democrats and Republicans, between the president and his own experts, or what he would call the deep state. Now, we saw, you know, a wonderful little example of all of this percolate overnight in the state of Wisconsin. There, the governor had a top public health official extend the stay-at-home orders. Well, the Republican legislature, the opposition party, essentially went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overruled the governor and said that, no, the stay-at-home orders can't be extended. Within an hour, you should see the pictures, the bars were filled with people. And this governor now says that I have no authority. This is the Wild West, and chaos now rules. And we saw a tattoo parlor in Texas that opened despite the orders, protected by 5 or 6 armed and masked gunmen. So, I mean, this is really hitting the divide where the president wants to open and the conservatives want to open, and the experts and the officials are saying, we want to save lives.
I'm only a bystander, Michael. You know, I'm only watching things from over here, but I've got to be with that whistleblower. I'm looking at those pictures. I'm hearing what you're saying. it's too hard too soon. I reckon some dark days are ahead. I get a feeling the worst is still yet to come, despite everything that's already happened. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing that these hospitals are going to be overrun again?
Well, it's amazing that you ask that, because look, you know, we've had states like Georgia and Colorado and Pennsylvania that opened about a week or 10 days ago, and we haven't seen spikes there. And the officials say, well, let's just wait another week or so and we'll see. We have about, 24 states have their cases of coronavirus in decline. Only 9 have cases rising. So there's this real push and pull. Honestly, it comes down to dollars or to lives. And, you know, with the right to bear arms, you know, the rights of free assembly, you know, Americans are very firm about their constitutional rights, and they're trying to exercise them and painting this health crisis as a constitutional crisis infringing on their liberties. I mean, that's just extraordinary. It's like not listening to a state governor in Queensland, in Australia.
Well, I've got to tell you what, you know, I love my time in the US, but there is no country I'd rather be than Australia right now. That is for sure.